The other day in New York City, we got yet another great example of Islamic coexistence. Outside Gracie Mansion or the residence of Zafran Mamdani, Jake Lang decided to host an anti-Islam demonstration. He wanted to apparently stop the takeover of New York City by Islam. Unfortunately, two Muslim teenagers then showed up with improvised explosive devices. Devices investigators say contained TATP and were packed with screws and bolts. They threw these at the demonstration in clear view of everyone. According to federal authorities, they were inspired by ISIS, had travelled in from Pennsylvania, and one of them allegedly talked about wanting something even bigger than the Boston Marathon bombing. Thankfully, the devices failed to properly detonate and no one was harmed. But that was due to pure chance. Or to be more precise, perhaps another example of cousin marriage not producing the smartest. Now, what was more interesting was the reaction to all of this. To me, it was almost Orwellian. Just like Australia after the Bondi shooting, even in America, the usual suspects immediately went into overdrive to ensure people didn't learn the truth about what had actually just happened. Now let's have a quick look at some of the footage that we saw from the demonstrations. This is footage directly from Jake Lang himself, and we can see how exactly it all went down. You see one of the terrorists? Look at how young he is. Just getting another device from the other guy. And it just goes down. They both get arrested and captured right here. Now, of course, you wouldn't really expect something like this to go down instantly in New York City, even at a demonstration like this, because, you know, it's meant to be a safe city, and counter-protesters generally just show up, and yeah, they might be aggressive, but to go to this extent, it only seems to happen when the demonstration is explicitly anti-Islamic. Now, we have a few more details about these two, because it's interesting that a 19 and 18-year-old were able to do this. So according to investigations, one of the terrorists, Balat, his parents were born in Turkey and reportedly became naturalized US citizens in 2017. Now this is what I always say, just because you have a piece of paper saying you're American now doesn't really mean anything. If you are trying to harm people who live in America for having a difference in opinion, that means you don't really believe in any values, any fundamental values that America was built on, primarily the First Amendment. So does it really make you an American, or are you just a paper American? I'll let you answer that one. So he is a US citizen, and neighbors confirmed he lives with his family in their 3,200 square foot two-story home. It is ironic because obviously this place that he hates so much, where he wants to harm its citizens, they've given him so much to be able to afford a house like this, and yet they still go out of their way to harm other citizens in the same country. So apparently he's understood to have travelled to Turkey multiple times in the past year, with his most recent trip having occurred in January. And apparently he's also visited Turkey a few times before that. And Kayumi's parents are from Afghanistan and became naturalized US citizens in 2004 and 2009. Same case here. But I always say when there are people who come from Afghanistan, especially males, I always say, what exactly are they really fleeing from in Afghanistan? Persecuting women? Stoning women? Like what exactly are they fleeing from? Because it's easily the most patriarchal society on the planet. So it's always odd that someone from there would flee to a Western country and then claim asylum, because they are the ones doing all the persecuting. What about the Afghan women? Shouldn't they be getting priority? What about any non-Muslims? I doubt many live in Afghanistan at the moment, but non-Muslims or gay people, they are the ones who should be getting asylum, but it never really seems to go that way. It always seems like countries bend over backwards to give asylum to people who do the persecuting. So apparently the Afghan, his parents are in a 5,800 square foot residence. It's not really clear whether he was living at home at the time, but it has 6 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms. I believe this is a little typo there on the Daily Mail. And yet, despite all of this, look at this. This is not normal at all. This is not for the average person. Despite all of this, a $2.25 million home, they still went out of their way to harm innocent people. Just for the fact that they were protesting and the topic of the protest was just something they didn't like. Just remember that there were a lot of people, counter-protesters and protesters there, and a lot of police officers, law enforcement, innocent people, journalists. All these people were there, and yet these two did not care about care about that at all. For them, their little jihad was way more important than even the lives of people who are on their side. And that immediately brings me to Walter Masterson. So this is really funny to me because I feel like this is probably one of the best examples of the Red-Green Alliance and the red side being just really stupid. So he was the person over whom the terrorists actually threw this improvised explosive device. Now I want you to really carefully listen to what he has to say when this went down.
We were born and raised in New York, and we want everyone here to stay in New York. You don't get to come from outside and then tell everyone else.
Yeah, he doesn't even know what to do. Someone on your side, the green side of the Red-Green Alliance, literally just used you as a springboard to try and harm innocent people. And look at him. He can't believe what just went down. In his mind, he's probably thinking about excuses already to make for the person who just did that. Because someone leapt over him, used him as a springboard, yelling Allahu Akbar before he did what he actually ended up doing. Now, the main thing here is also what he was saying prior to the Islamists jumping over him. And that was that everyone was welcome here. You know, the usual buzzwords, the usual rhetoric that you hear from the red side or the left side of this alliance. That is the irony. And there's no better example of the left side or the red side being used as the useful idiots they are than this particular video. And he doubled down, like he's still complaining about Jake Lang, despite the fact that this could have ended up as a major tragedy with multiple people losing their lives. His major point is, and he's saying he stands by it, as a born and raised in New Yorker, everyone is welcome, everyone except Jake Lang. That's still his point. You can see how cooked their minds are when they're like this. There's really nothing going on in here. They have no critical thinking skills. They aren't even able to identify danger when it grabs you by the shoulder and springboards off you to launch an IED from where you were standing. That's really the type of people they are. And look at this. He goes further. Stressed us enough. It was right near our feet and it did not look real. We just stood there laughing. So apparently a bunch of women just ran away. But yeah, because they don't have any survival skills. They saw this. They heard the typical Allahu Akbar. They saw all of that, and yet, you know, because the leftist thinking had completely cooked their minds, they just didn't understand the context of what was going on. They literally just stood there, dumbfounded, lost for words, staring at an IED, waiting to accept their fate. It's almost poetic, but you know, they're also really lucky. I'm glad nobody got harmed in the end. And you can see, quite literally, everybody's just calling them out for what just happened, and a nice screenshot there as well of this. Yeah, that's a nice little cartoon. And yeah, you can see, yeah, this is correct. It is cognitive dissonance. You can see right there in his mind, the math just isn't mathing. Like it's not. You know what? Everything he was brainwashed to say and do, none of that is competing right now. He has nothing to say. It's all gone. In that one moment, I feel like he had two choices: to run and finally come to terms with the fact that these were dangerous people and this is a dangerous ideology, or to double down. Because he would rather not be blown up by someone like that than say the wrong thing and lose that status of being a virtue signaler. Now, quick note before we move on: if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. This channel is entirely fan supported, so if you want to support the work and the mission behind it, consider joining Patreon. That's what keeps the channel alive and gives you early access. It's completely ad-free on longer and uncensored videos, written articles, and member-only chats. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about here was the fact that this happened in front of Gracie Mansion, which is the residence of Zohran Mamdani, and yet he came out and put out a tweet that made it sound like what happened did not actually happen. Now, remember, everyone's really lucky, including Mr. Mamdani, the fact that these devices did not go off, and therefore many people are still alive today. And yet, the way he put out this tweet, you wouldn't think that's what actually happened. Now, he goes yesterday, of course he has to say, white supremacist Jake Lang, of course, and it seems like anybody who's critical of Islam apparently is a white supremacist. Yeah, this is debate for 10-year-olds, I guess. Organized a protest outside Gracie Mansion rooted in bigotry and racism. Number one, criticizing Islam is not racism because Islam isn't a race. Such hate has no place in New York City, It is an affront to our city's values and the unity that defines who we are. What followed was even more disturbing. Actually, before I read any further, it doesn't really seem like there's that much unity if people are willing to throw bombs at people who don't share the same opinion, and the fact that there are people who would come out the woodwork and actually try and defend literal terrorists literally a day or two after. Now, what followed was even more disturbing. Violence at a protest is never acceptable. The attempt to use an explosive device and hurt others is not only criminal, it is reprehensible and the antithesis of who we are. I want to thank the brave men and women of the NYPD who acted quickly to keep New Yorkers safe. Our officers ran toward danger without hesitation, demonstrating once again the courage and dedication it takes to protect the city every single day. My administration is closely monitoring the situation and I remain in close contact with our police commissioner. So reading this, you feel like it was Jake Lang who was the culprit here. The white supremacist, the racist. It doesn't really say that there was a protest and a counter-protest. Because he only says Jake Lang organized the protest, then he makes it out like the violence came from that specific protest itself. He doesn't say that it came from a counter-protest. He doesn't outline the fact that the IEDs were thrown by ISIS-aligned Muslims. He doesn't say any of that. His tweet here is to trick people. If you just read this and didn't see the video I showed you before, or didn't actually get any further context behind it, what would you think? You would think it was someone who was with Jake Lang who threw those devices. You wouldn't think at all that it was actually a counter-protester. In fact, you wouldn't even know there was a counter-protest if you just went by what Zohran Mamdani said. Now, my opinion of Zohran has always been that he's a bit of a poser Muslim, a TikTok Muslim, because he knows how to get the support of leftists, I guess. He wants to really play into this token Muslim role, and it got him the votes. Because there's nothing in Islam that talks about being aligned with gay people or many leftist ideas, or it doesn't believe in the equality of men and women. It doesn't believe in any of that. Whereas Mamdani is a far left individual, and he just so happened to be I would say a bit of a cultural Muslim, but he's able to wear that skin suit really well and make it out like he's the token ethnic Muslim, and therefore all the virtue signaling white leftists have to vote for him. That's how he got elected to this position here. And I think he's once again playing this role really well. He's able to go ahead and defend what I would say is an indefensible position, and what he's also doing is covering for literal terrorists. I mean, how else could you put it? Because he's very clearly specific about who the protesters were on Jake Lang's side, but when it comes to the other side, he leaves out pretty much every single key detail. He leaves it out so much so that you think there was only one protest, and that was Jake Lang's side, and they were the ones throwing these devices at his residence. It's bizarre. It's Orwellian. And yet this is the person who leads that city. He's in charge. So if this is how he's behaving, just imagine institutionally, imagine everybody else. What are they going to be like? What about the citizens? They really have no hope in the face of what is literal violent terrorism. Now I did however think even in this video we have to give a shout out to the chief of police for the NYPD, Aaron Edwards. Without hesitation, he jumped over that fence and he ran towards the terrorists to tackle them and bring them down. Like he just ran towards, and this is just such a cool photo. He did not hesitate, even for a second. He ran towards them without knowing fully what was going on, and I figured he really should be recognized for this. Now, ironically enough, after all of that, what does Zohran Mamdani do? He should have invited this gentleman over to his house for dinner. But what does he do instead? Now, you all know who Mahmoud Khalil is. He's a Palestinian man who the Trump administration was trying to deport for his anti-American antics. But Mamdani invited Mahmoud Khalil's wife and Mahmoud himself over for dinner only yesterday. And this post he put out, he's like, it's been marked by profound hardship and blah, blah, blah. And therefore he's glad to be having, breaking their fast with him. It's really bizarre because he almost makes it sound like we don't know who Mahmoud Khalil is. Now, I could just quickly scroll up and we know exactly the type of person Mahmoud is. He is essentially aligned with the type of person who would throw an explosive device at Mamdani's house or the mayor's mansion or residence. Because his organization, the organization Mahmoud Khalil runs, is apparently fighting for the total eradication of Western civilization. And they stand in full solidarity with every movement for liberation in the global south. Our intifada is an international one. As you know, the intifada was truly globalized when 15 people were shot in Bondi in Sydney as well, here in Australia. Now, they want to globalize all of that. Even in America, we just saw a video of them trying to globalize it in New York City. So it is very odd that Mamdani, on top of running cover for people who are throwing explosive devices near his house, he is also inviting people who explicitly say they're fighting for the total eradication of Western civilization, where they're living right now, where Mamdani is a mayor of a city in Western civilization. That is who he's inviting to break his fast with him. You also got to see the real irony here, because Mahmoud Khalil, despite the fact that he wants to eradicate Western civilization, he hates the United States, he hates Europe, he hates Canada and Australia, and he hates everyone living there apart from Muslims. And yet he's fighting so hard against deportation. Despite wanting to destroy Western civilization, he would rather anything but get deported or leave Western civilization. That's the real irony here, isn't it? And yet Mamdani, he has no issues inviting somebody like that into his own home and put it up on the internet on his main account and get thousands of likes, millions of views on it. Do you see what the Red-Green Alliance is pushing us towards? This is almost like the end game here. They didn't need a very large population or voting bloc to get here. They essentially needed to gain control of the red side or the leftist side, and here they are. They are the rulers now. Like, despite literal terrorists operating right in front of Zohran Mamdani's residence, he doesn't care about that. He blames the protesters for exercising their free speech. That's who he's blaming. Not the people who try to instigate violence. And also, certainly, not the people who explicitly state that their goal is to eradicate Western civilization through a global intifada. And you just know they're not talking about peaceful means. They've never believed in it. What they're talking about is outright violence. Now you can see, like, this is not the first person who's been aligned with Zohran Mamdani who said something like this. You can even see one of his interns talk about a holy
true believer knows that none of this is in vain, that this is all jihad, that this is all ibadah, and that this is all counted for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the conversation of doxing, the conversation of getting arrested and suspended, I think it's time for Muslims to start to say, all right, so what? Do what you want. I'm gonna do what I gotta do, because it's about time to do that. And I know everybody has their own families and
I just can't deal with that face. So I'm just gonna scroll down a little bit. Yeah, that's the type of person that we're dealing with. They're outright openly telling you right now that they're wanting jihad. And we just know what they're talking about, don't we? Like, despite the taqiyya and all of that, we just know that they're calling for violence against, ironically, they live in America, but what they're calling for is violence against Americans. That's what they're doing. They want to violently uproot everything that built America and turn it into, these failed states that Islam produces. That's what they're after. And these are the people that Zohran Mamdani openly employs into his team. So you can really see what type of person he is. And we can actually go beyond that and have a look at this. Zohran Mamdani, I'll actually skip a little bit here. So he's at a mosque for Ramadan. Now, I want to skip a little bit further. And I want, he's in attendance here. He's in this group praying. Now, I want you to listen very carefully to what the Imam says, or what he prays for.
محمد وأن يجعلني من المنتظرين لك والتابعين والناصرين لك على أعدائك والمستشهدين بين يديك في جملة أوليائك والفرج فيه للمؤمنين على يديك وقتل الكافرين بسيفك.
Yeah, did you see that? That's this is the type of prayer that Zohran Mamdani is attending. That is what they're praying. And I have said this on my channel a lot, even on the live streams. I always say I would love for more people to see what is being said in mosques for you to understand the religion a lot better. So a lot of the time, you know what, even people attending don't really understand what is being said because it's in Arabic, and you know, most Muslims don't actually understand Arabic at all. And yet this is what they're praying for. Like Zohran Mamdani is in attendance here. He literally spoke to all these people here, and right after, they're literally praying for violence like this. It's absolutely bizarre. And now it gets even more interesting because today CNN actually put out a really funny tweet about what happened in New York City. Look at this. 2 Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into New York City Saturday morning for what could have been a normal day enjoying the city during abnormally warm weather. But in less than an hour, their lives would drastically change as the pair would be arrested for throwing homemade bombs during an anti-Muslim protest outside of Mayor Zohran Mamdani's home. Here's what we know so far. God, talk about whitewashing what actually went on. Like, obviously there was a bit of a pile-on about this on X, and then they just went on to issue a correction, or I guess they deleted the original tweet, but they go a post regarding the 2 individuals arrested for throwing homemade bombs outside of New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's home failed to reflect the gravity of the incident, thereby breaching the editorial standards we require for all our reporting. It has therefore been deleted. And the community note actually here is very interesting because it says they deleted the post without clarifying that it was not anti-Muslim protesters who threw the bombs, as the original post framed as likely. Yeah, it is literally what Mamdani tried to do as well. The 2 screamed Allah Akbar while throwing the bombs. Upon arrest, they confessed and pledged allegiance to ISIS. Yeah, so as you can see, in the original protest, they make it seem like they blur the lines. Once again, you don't really understand who is responsible for instigating that violence. And it's very clear, like the 2 arrested for throwing them. But CNN and Zohran Mamdani both, and CNN is one of the biggest networks in the world. And yet this is, you know, in the modern day, I guess, when it comes to Islamic terrorism, they all try to run cover for it. They are the mouthpiece for Islamic terrorism today. Because according to them, this religion can do no harm. They're not behind any forms of terrorism or violence when we see it right before our eyes. Which is why I said at the start of the video, this all feels really Orwellian. Like Mamdani, CNN, they're all asking us to reject the evidence in front of our eyes. Like even the New York Times, they put out something where it says smoking jars of metal and fuses thrown at protests near mayor's house. So even here, they don't really say who was in charge, who actually threw devices. They say 6 people were arrested after anti-Islamic protesters led by the right-wing activist Jake Lang clashed with counter-protesters near Gracie Mansion. Like in this, who was responsible? And what are these smoking jars of metal and fuses? They do not want to call it what it actually is, and they also do not want to assign responsibility to the parties that were actually responsible. Even the New York Times, as you know, is one of the most widely circulated newspapers and websites in the world. And apparently we are meant to trust it very much. It's one of the most trusted news sources in the world, which I don't believe is actually accurate. And yet, even they couldn't tell the truth. Telling the truth is beyond these people. This is all propaganda. And it is more evidence of the mask slipping. I mean, right in front of our eyes. Look, my views on Zohran Mamdani are very clear. I think he's evidence of a growing red-green alliance in most Western countries, and I feel like it's one of the most dangerous alliances we've ever seen. Because if they're able to essentially make large news organizations and government institutions behave that way, then yeah, to counter and reverse this, a loss of significant political will is then required. And hopefully there comes a day when we are in fact able to counter and reverse that. But before that day comes, I think what's more important for us to do is for us to be able to tell the truth before the truth is perverted by organizations and individuals like Zohran Mamdani.
In the neon haze of a broken dawn, steel towers hum, but the wild runs on.